Alright, so this is my case 646 project that I've been working on. In the last video that I had on this, which I highly recommend watching, I tore this entire machine apart and I cleaned it. I did a bench test with the engine. I looked at the electrical, I looked at the hydraulic system, I looked at the fuel system. Basically just went through this whole thing and I've been experimenting on what is going on with it. So, off camera, I've been investigating this thing quite a bit, and I think I have an idea of what's going on here. All right. I basically kind of gave up the idea of putting the 22 horse V-twin Predator in this. I cannot get it to start and run decent, so I'm not putting that in here. Really looking forward to getting this thing running, driving, and operating. So with that being said, I'm gonna go with my original idea, which is to buy a brand new 420cc Predator engine from Harbor Freight. I was lucky, I had a 20% off coupon because I'm an Inside Track Club member. By the time this video will be up, I'm sorry the sale will be done, but I basically got this engine brand new for just a little bit over 300 bucks. So not bad. It's usually $379.99 new. I did not get an extended warranty, but I think I have like 90 days, which, you know, that's plenty of time to see if there's anything wrong with it. But the nice thing about this 420cc engine is I have one already on my mini excavator. You know, if anyone casts any doubt on this size engine being in this case, this engine runs my entire mini excavator, and this thing has plenty of power. It's got 2 drive motors, I think 5 cylinders up front. It's got a swing motor in it and 1 pump. This engine starts and runs fantastic, and it has plenty of power to operate this whole thing. So I have no doubt in my mind this is enough engine for this application. I have been able to measure off of this to kind of figure out whether or not, you know, this size engine would fit in this case, and I think it will. I know I can get it in there one way or another. I just don't know how much modification I'm gonna have to do. I also got 2 quarts of Toro 10W30. I absolutely love this oil. I pretty much put it in all of my small engines, and I like it because it has zinc additive in it. This engine here takes 1.16 quarts, so I'll have some left over there. But this is fantastic oil, and this does not come with oil, I don't think. Keep in mind, if you buy one of these little engines, cut this thing out of the box and keep it. I'm gonna put this thing on the wall somewhere along with all my other weird stuff. Not long ago, I ordered a hydraulic pump mount that's made for 8 to 15 horsepower engines. We'll see if that's what's actually in there. It seems kind of small, but maybe I'm just being paranoid. Get this thing opened up here. I'm gonna set this thing down. That's how it looks in the box. Looks pretty good to me. I love it when stuff is fresh and new. Looks pretty good to me. This is kind of new. I haven't seen whatever that thing is, breather or something. Some sort of EPA BS, I don't know. One thing I like about this engine is the electric start. This thing right here though does stick off to the side a little bit. If I can fit this on there and not have to do a bunch of wiring, then awesome. Take this keyway out. The end of this mount is not gonna work with this pump. This is the homemade one. I don't think I'm gonna be able to use this. Not unless I modified it. Out of curiosity here, what are we looking at for length? 9.5 to this. So 9.5. Alright, so I've been messing with this for a little while. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be able to make this work. So, took a little bit of finesse. You probably can't tell from the angle of this camera, but this engine is not like square in here. It's actually at an angle like this. Both cylinders and both lift arms are clearing. The hydraulic tank, even though it's extremely close, is technically still clearing, and it's not even, you know, tight. Really, so I could probably kind of move it around or force it to kind of get out of the way a little bit. Not to mention I could actually move this tank forward because I measured with the hood and there's actually quite a bit of airspace in there. So this, either this whole front assembly here or maybe just this reservoir tank can get moved forward. The engine itself, even though this recoil is really close, I think is okay. I think it's clearing good enough. Obviously I don't want anything touching each other because it'll rattle and that'll drive me nuts, and then it'll obviously wear, you know, you don't want nothing touching, otherwise it'll kind of vibrate and it'll cause points of wear. I obviously knew that the mounting holes on this engine were not going to line up. I knew that right away just looking at it. Since this engine is kind of where I want it, I'm going to take a black Sharpie and I'm going to draw on the tractor around the engine so I know the angle where the engine needs to be, and I'm basically just going to make some homemade mounts and you know, drill some holes and everything so then it can get bolted in. As far as the pump goes, down here there's a nice little void of space. Luckily the steering gears, it's down a little bit. Steering shaft is, you know, obviously farther away from all that. I measured, and I'm not even kidding, 9.5 inches, which is how long the end of this pump with that stock output shaft and the Lovejoy coupler on there, with that all bolted in just like I measured earlier, it's going to be 9.5. And 9.5 is literally, you know, like right here. It's going to be really close to this steering gear, but technically it's not going to obstruct anything. So I think it'll work. One thing I didn't kind of realize, or I guess I didn't think about it, was that obviously down here, you know, you got your choke and then your fuel shut off. Right up there, right here, is a throttle. That's not a big deal though, because they give you places to hook up throttle cables and choke cables and everything, so that's fine. I can deal with that. I haven't looked at the paperwork yet. I don't know what this thing is. I don't understand. If it's just like an intake breather or something, why have that on there and have an air cleaner? It's confusing to me. So I'm gonna have to look in the paperwork and see what this is. There's even a little nub on there where you can stick another hose. So these low pressure hoses, the bottom hose fits in there just fine, so it's gonna be out of the way. This top hose right here has to go on the back of the hydraulic pump, so that's gonna be kind of way in there. I know I can get it to work, and since the engine's gonna be off to the side, I think this hose is probably gonna be able to reach. And you know what? If it doesn't, it's just hose. I can go get more, make a longer one. I'll make it work. I really do think this is all gonna go together pretty decent. Hopefully the hydraulic pump works. Hopefully I can get this engine to start and then move the pump correctly. Which obviously, you know, I'm gonna break this engine in first before putting a pump on it. Another thing too is with this hood, this piece of metal right here is I'm gonna bend it just a little bit, and it has to go between this reservoir and the engine. So I'm gonna have to bend that. I don't have to cut it off, but I'm gonna have to bend it a little bit, which is not a big deal. Another thing too, I don't really know exactly for sure what the stock height is for this hood. The exhaust comes out, you know, on the back side of that hood. I have no idea if that's, you know, gonna cause a problem or not. Like I said, I'm gonna have to take a Sharpie, kind of draw where this engine needs to be. This side of the engine is not even on that frame at all. Right now I have two pieces of scrap metal holding that side of the engine up. So I'm basically just gonna draw a line on this frame that's in line with the side of the engine mounts, or the bottom of the engine, I guess you could say. I'm really not great at explaining this type of stuff. I'm not a good teacher. I'm not a good fabricator, but I'm gonna make this work. And then if anybody, you know, has the same project going on, you don't really have to copy me, or, you know, maybe you come up with something better, but I'm just gonna show that it can be done. And I'll say this right now, because I gotta say it. I really have been liking Case. My Case 220 is awesome. This Case 646 is awesome, even though that Predators cause a lot of issues. Case gives you a lot of room and a lot of freedom with this old machinery. You know, the 200 series ones, the 400 series ones, 600 series. John Deere, which I've only owned two of them. I've owned a 212 and a 317, and John Deere gives you no room for anything. And it's just, there's no way you'd be able to do this with that much room. That's why Case is awesome. The grill, the hood, you know, the grill supports that go across the hood on here, it's wide, there's plenty of airspace. So good on Case for doing that. I don't really know how old this thing is, but good on them for designing something that can be altered, you know, decades into the future. So pretty cool. Anyway, this next part of the video I'm gonna have kind of a hard time filming, so I'm just gonna do my thing and I'll just kind of show you what I can. This right here is the mounting plate for the engine. I just need to weld it, do some grinding on it, and then that is gonna go right on top of this frame here. I'm not welding that onto this frame. I am either gonna use existing holes, or I'm gonna maybe make some new holes in this frame to get that mounting plate on here, but I don't wanna weld anything. I want this frame to be pretty much original. And then this piece here, I took the original homemade hydraulic pump mount and basically just extended it, because whoever actually made this did a halfway decent job. It's not bad at all. The Chinese mount that I got on the internet, this part is fine, but obviously the end of it where the pump goes does not work with my pump. This is for those really tiny, like log splitter hydro pumps. And I was gonna cut this and kind of redo it, but I actually like it, so I'm gonna hold on to it in case I make a homemade log splitter or something in the future. So put that off to the side. But anyway, this isn't a bad mount. So basically all I did is I added 1 3/4 inches to the back of it. So in that time lapse, I had to drill 12 holes basically through this rectangular steel and then this little piece here. And then I did hone out the holes a little bit on this mount. The mounting bolts for the engine, and I put it in my thread checker, and it turns out it is a 5/16 24 fine. SAE. Went to Tractor Supply, got 4 of these. These are 2.5 inches long. So these are going to go through this little addition here I put on. And that threading, there's going to be just enough threading on the end of that to go thread into the back of the engine, holding this whole plate and the hydraulic pump steady and connected to the engine. So I've been working on this for a while, and I think I have the engine lined up pretty much as perfect as it's gonna get. Like I said, it's at an angle. It's not perpendicular with the frame. It's just a little bit tilted. I pretty much have this thing clamped down where I want it. I'm gonna be welding a bolt on the engine mount and utilizing this little tab that's already on there. And then off to the side here, I cut this little piece. I'm going to weld that little tab to the engine mount, and then obviously stick a bolt through that hole. And then on the other side, the engine actually sits not directly over the frame. It actually goes off to the side a little bit. So as you can see, that's why I had to make that engine frame underneath to extend in between the tractor frame. And because some of it is exposed and it's not going to be covered by the engine, then I can actually just have bolts go through this engine mount and then through the frame using holes that are already on the frame. That'll fasten the engine mount down. And then of course I have to on this side of the mount, there's room where I can just drill a hole and then stick a bolt through and then fasten the engine down to the mount, you know, just by sticking a bolt through. On the other side, I can't really do that because the holes are kind of directly over the custom engine mount. So I got to think about that a little bit, which I think on this side I can just run a bolt through it and that'll be fine. But it's this corner right here is the one I'm not sure what to do. I really don't feel like sticking a nut in there and then trying to find that every time I'm, you know. So I'll have to think about that corner, but I think all the other corners of the engine are taken care of. So I have a way to fasten the engine down good. Both of the lift arms are out of the way. One way I know that is when I drop this hood down, obviously the hood goes over the engine, so that's good. I put this hydraulic tank on, and it's pretty much tightened all the way down, and as you can see, it's extremely close to that engine, but it's not, you know, nothing I can't take care of. I can actually angle this forward a little bit. There's plenty of room when the grill and the hood is down. So it's what, like I said, that's what I love about Case. They give you all this room. And then here's the hydraulic pump. Now, as you can see, it's extremely close to the steering shaft, and it's really close to some of these hydraulic lines. But the nice thing about this pump is I can actually, you know, kind of build my own configuration of hydraulic parts, you know. So as long as it's not touching anything, I'll make it work. I'll get the hoses to hook up to it. It'll be fine. I do have this pump upside down, but I'll flip that. I have to take the engine back off anyways, but I think this is gonna work. Everything I'm doing here is taking me a lot of time. It's kind of difficult to film, but I'm gonna keep going. Basically, I'm gonna take this engine off. I wanna get the custom engine mount finished. I'm gonna take the hydraulic pump off of this, and then I need to test run this engine. I'll need to add oil and gas to that, do the break-in thing. And then once the engine's broke in and I know it runs good and everything, then I'll stick the hydraulic pump on there and obviously get it all hooked up. And I'm hoping after all this work, when I go to start this engine, it has enough power to stay running and get that pump moving. All right, let's keep going. There's a bolt that I welded on the side there that goes through that. Just put a nut and a washer underneath. I welded this little tab there so I can just stick a bolt into that hole. This corner over here, that hole was already there in the frame, so I just drilled this weird looking hole in the corner of the mount. So it's kind of adjustable, which is nice, but it mounts there. And then right here was kind of a weird spot because I needed to be able to fasten down this corner of the engine. So instead of drilling in the frame or drilling in this again, I made this tab that's gonna kind of look like that, only it's gonna go underneath, and the bolt is gonna go through the engine, through this mount, and then into this tab. And when it's tightened down, it's gonna pull the corner of this mount down, and then obviously hold the engine down too. So okay, time to add the oil. 1.16 quarts. Got my 10W30 with zinc. Yeah, I think I'm gonna call that good. Run it for a while, double check it. For now, I'll use pull start. I have to do the electric start wiring later. Got throttle right here. That's about half. Fuel is on. Choke is on. It's got oil. I think we're good to go. Oh yeah, there's a kill switch. You have to turn the ignition to on. Man, that's smooth. That doesn't vibrate or anything. That's really nice. Alright, I'm going to run this thing for about a half hour to 45 minutes. All right, so I think I'm pretty much ready to go on seeing if this thing is going to work or not. Sorry for the lack of detail with putting everything back together. It took me long enough anyways without really trying to film it right. But to be honest with you, I really don't know what I'm doing anyway. So, but to my surprise, this engine bolted in exactly how I measured it to be. A little bit close there, but like I said, I can always put washers underneath of this mount and then tilt that forward so it doesn't touch that recoil, but I'm not really too worried about that right now. Engine bolted in there perfect. Had to drill some more holes on the mount. So there's 4 bolts holding the engine to the mount, and then same thing with the mount itself. I got the assembly for the hydraulic pump good and tight. By a miracle, this thing fits in there. Close. I mean, it's that fitting right there is really close to that hard line. Obviously the pump comes out pretty far towards the seat, but it doesn't touch anything. It doesn't impede the steering shaft or the steering gear. That hose that goes to the back of the machine goes under there. It might be hitting on something, so I'll have to zip tie it out of the way. It's kind of a good thing it's actually too long. That way I can actually mess around with it a little bit. I tried to tighten every hydraulic fitting on this thing. I'm gonna have something leaking. I know I am, but it's part of the process, I suppose. Obviously I hooked the cylinders back up because I want to see, you know, if the loader will work and everything, kind of cycle all the hydraulic fluid throughout the whole thing. I did remove the fuel tank. There's no reason to have it in there at this time, and then the hose is just kind of dangling around and it leaks and stuff, so took that out. The nice thing about this engine is it has its own fuel tank, and I kind of like that. I am a little concerned about how hot it'll get in here because I don't want this gas to boil. That's always kind of a good reason to have the fuel tank away from the engine heat. So I get that. I could always kind of switch that up later if I need to. I don't have the electric start hooked up yet. I'm going to be pull starting this once I get some fluid in this. If it's too hard to do it with the pull start, then I guess I'll hook up the electric, but I just want to make sure this thing works first before kind of doing everything, because if there's an issue here, I'm gonna have to take all this out and this will all be kind of for nothing. I had to mess around with these hoses just a little bit to get them to fit in there, but if I need to, I'll get some more of this hose material, some longer stuff, and then I'll, you know, redo it so then these hoses aren't kind of so tight. But they're on there. I got the throttle cables out of the way right now, just dangling. There's oil in the engine, gas in the engine. Now I just need to add the 1540 that this machine takes. I believe it's supposed to be 2050, but it's more expensive, so I'm going to put in 1540. I'll have to add some, run it, add some, run it, get it cycled through somewhat. Choke, fuel on. That's tight, everything looks good. So this thing is working pretty good. Definitely that 22 horse V-twin was having issues because this engine starts just fine even with the pull starter. So I'm glad that I think this pump is good enough for it'll work for this situation, so I don't think I have to get a new pump. Right now I'm pretty much just out the little over 300 bucks that I spent on the new engine and you know, some 1540, and that's kind of it. That's all I really needed to get this thing kind of going. I have a bunch of small stuff to do. All right, well, I couldn't get both the choke and the throttle hooked up, but I hooked up the throttle, and unfortunately I had to use the longer one, which happens to be the choke. So the throttle does nothing, it's not hooked to anything. I got both of these kind of just hooked together out of the way. I can always hook them up differently later. So if you see down in there, that's the throttle. I had to loosen right here. I had to loosen this lock nut with a 10mm, just enough because it was too tight, but now it's just loose enough that this throttle linkage can move that. So this is pretty common with these engines. You usually have to loosen that. I had to do that on this one when I made my own little setup here. So one thing I don't like about this engine here is that the new ones have a bunch of weird junk on it. You got this stupid little breather box that goes up there, and the air filter assembly doesn't like to come apart very easy because there's hoses and all kinds of other crap in the way. Basically goes to the tank. It must be a vent or something like that. So whatever, but sure runs good. Let's see, so now before I put the grill back on, I am gonna get the electric start good to go. So I had, from another project, I had a black battery cable and I ran it, sorry this is hard to see, I ran it and I just connected it to one of the bolts that holds the engine down. So pretty easy, good ground connection there. So that's good and tight. And then the other end's right here. And then the positive terminal, I'm just following the directions on here. So this is page number 6 of the 420cc Predator owner's manual, page 6. You just hook up a positive cable from the battery down to the starter solenoid, I believe, which is this right here, I think, maybe. So I'm gonna hook a cable from that up to the positive of the battery, and then it should pretty much start off of this key. I ended up putting the 22 horse V-twin in storage, but before I did that, I robbed a battery cable off of it so I don't have to go buy another one. Okay, should turn over. Alright, see how much better that is from that V-twin? This has sat for like 3 hours. I was off running errands, took the V-twin out, threw it where my other equipment is stored, so it was out in my garage, and it fired right up. So that's crazy. I'm really glad I got a new engine for this instead of messing around with that V-twin. That thing was pretty cursed. So, all right, now I'll put the grill back on. All right, now I'm gonna put the bucket back on. So my throttle cable setup that I had right here, I ran it underneath this air filter assembly, and they were actually hitting on some of the linkages on the carburetor. So no matter what I did, it was running super high RPM. So undid it, took one cable, just ran it through the dash, kind of looped it up here, goes down there and hooks in. This is low idle. That's high idle. You can see it moving over there. I still need to, at some point I'll figure out some sort of setup for the choke, because it's kind of like right now I can find it really easy, but with you know, if the loader is down, then this ram is kind of in the way. So same thing sort of with the key switch here. When the loader is down, then it's not so bad. You can just stick your hand underneath that cylinder and then you can start it. But I would never want to kind of stick it between the loader arm and the cylinder, just in case if, you know, something was leaning on that handle or something. Don't want to break your arm off. But then of course at some point I should probably get a key switch up on the dash, but for now it's not at the top of my list. Probably, yeah, I'll probably need to add some more fluid here. What's cool is that I did find right here, it says hydraulic reservoir, winter 5W20 and summer 2040. So that's kind of cool. It says maintain level 2 to 3 inches below top of filler opening. So 2 to 3 inches from the opening here, which is probably about what it's at. Might need to add just a tiny bit, but these pins on here, I'm actually gonna put some new holes in these and kind of cut them, make them a little bit shorter, and then put some washers on there, hone out these holes a little bit, you know, put some decent sized pins to keep these from sliding out. And then I can grease them and I think they'll be all right. I really don't need to buy new pins for this thing. It's all loosey-goose anyways. It's however many years old. I don't even know what year this thing is. But one thing I kind of thought about earlier when I was driving this around, I noticed that in low gear, or it's a hydro, so it has high and low, but in low, when you press this hydro pedal down, it doesn't want to move, so you really got to press it down and then it's fine. And I think maybe that's why that piece of metal was welded on that. I think that's why this was welded on there. Maybe instead of somebody being kind of short, they just welded this on there because they didn't want to have to press so hard with their foot to get this thing to move. So I need to look into that because there's probably a better answer than just welding something to that pedal there. But I guess if I really had to, I could make my own little foot thing here that has some grip to it, you know. But definitely not using this again. The front steer tires, especially this one, kind of loses some air. And when it gets squishy, this thing gets hard to turn. Obviously, it has all the weight on the front of it. So I threw a little bit of air in this. I'll see what it does. Maybe it'll hold it, maybe not. I don't know. But obviously this most likely original Firestone tire is, you know, dry rotted. So I wouldn't blame it one bit if it didn't want to hold air. Obviously the rear tires are in pretty good shape. I like those. Those are those cool industrial tires like on my Coyote tractor. So you know what? I actually have a job for this thing already. So I'm pretty happy with this machine so far. It's definitely come a long ways since I bought it. At least now it finally has a good power plant in it. So obviously this thing doesn't lift as much as my Coyote. You know, it's not as high tech, but it certainly has a lot of character. But I think I'm gonna end this video right here. I'm at least really happy that I got to, you know, run the loader and drive around a little bit. I still have a lot of small things that need to be done. So in the next video on this, probably fix some stuff on this while it's still here in my shop, and then I'll take it out and put it to work. So definitely looking forward to that. So stay tuned. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And thank you so much for watching.